I'm getting finger guns. Finger guns means we're online. So once you can hear me, please confirm and we will get our lovely show started. Hello, Twitch world. I see a hey from Johnson BSG of Yavor. Welcome, Yavor. It's always great to see you. Hope you're doing well. Welcome to 2022, everybody. This is DevStream number 24, the first in the new year. It is great to see you guys. I think we're gonna have a fun show today. I have my normal guest, normal but doesn't mean not special. Alex, how you doing, Alex?
Hi, Brad. I'm great. Happy New Year to everyone. And yeah, normal doesn't mean normal.
So I apologize for being 1 or 2 minutes late. See this background behind me? Our lovely producer Nadine was like, your background is a little bit cropped out and a little bit weird, and maybe we should fix the little black bars. And I'm like, all right, let's try that. But then the aspect ratio is a problem, and I'm just trying to get it right. So now I have this new friend that I can kind of poke at right here because I'm doing a new background roll. But it looks nice and clean and full screen. So apologize for the last minute, 2 minute or 3 minute delay. It's all my background's fault, but now it works great, so we're all good. Alex, how was your New Year's, and how has 2022 been treating you so far?
So far, so great. We had some nice vacation on a mountain resort here. It's between 3 mountains, so it's a very special place for the Bulgarians. We all love it. I hate sometimes myself because I'm not skiing, but we had some fun with the kids with slates and so on, so it was nice.
Awesome, that's great. Yeah, I have not been snowboarding or skiing in so long. My board sits in my garage and cries because I live in flat Texas and haven't gotten out there. I'm very jealous. Yavor, you know the way to my heart. Thank you so much for asking about the Braves. I mean, I have my World Series champion balls sitting here on my desk. So I got that going for me, and I have hats, stuff galore from the championship. But we're in off season right now, so still a few more months before things kick back up, and I get to enjoy my obsession again. But appreciate the ask, everyone. It's great to see you. I think we're gonna have a wonderful stream today. We got a lot to go over. It is all multiplayer today, and I know that from the 13 or 14 plus responses on the Dev Diary, people seem to be very excited about multiplayer, I think, Alex.
Yeah, I hope so, because we are extremely excited. Actually, for me, this game is twice the fun on multiplayer. I know that for some people, they love the more calm experience in single player, just play one games with their kingdoms, with their best pace, so slower games if they want. But I just love the competition, so it's I hope that people will also love it.
Yeah, I know we've shared a couple multiplayer stories here and there throughout our streaming journey together, but today we get to focus in on it. I think that's gonna be a lot of fun. And yeah, I know multiplayer is something that I think all Knights of Honor fans have craved since they got their first taste of the game back, over a decade and a half ago. And I feel like obviously in the original Knights of Honor there was just kind of that RTS. Kind of like a battle teaser, right? But bringing, actually kind of like taking a completely different direction. Now we're just bringing the metagame and the worldview play to multiplayer, but with a whole bunch of new features and functionality. Yeah, I think it's really, really exciting. So let's, this is the second part, and there may be a third part. Don't know. We're not saying it's part 2 of 2. It's part 2 of N.
Second.
There's a lot.
There's a lot more to talk about. Yeah.
Yeah. Let's quickly just kind of give everyone a reminder. So there is, if you haven't read the Dev Diary, by the way, community.knightsofhonor.com. You can read all of our Dev Diaries up there. There's a tremendous amount of content at this point. We've been doing this for a while. And we also have multiplayer part 1, which goes through a number of topics. Some of those questions you guys may answer if you didn't watch that one, or sorry, that you may ask today if you didn't watch that one. I'll try to go through the super high level. We're designing multiplayer to be the world view experience. We do not plan to support the RTS gameplay and multiplayer. And there's a lot of reasons for that we talked about in our last stream. I don't want to go through them again, or I'll spend the whole stream rehashing last stream's content. So really, if you want to see part 1, go watch that video or see that stream, or read that Dev Diary. We are supporting right now 6 players. That number could go up. It won't go down. We're still doing some testing and kind of balancing, but the goal is to allow you to play with yourself and a group of friends, not just one other person, and have a lot of fun with different experiences in Knights of Honor. So those are the super high level stuff that I wanted to just cover as a blanket reminder. And again, there is a multiplayer part 1. We'll talk about it there. Please feel free to consume that content. I'll answer some. I won't be completely, dictatorial. I'll answer a few questions if they come up, but I want to focus on the cool topics we have today, which today we're really talking about, and it's super important, but it's all of the setup, all the options that you have when you're in a multiplayer game. I think that's really the point of today, right?
Yeah, actually, when you make different settings, it feels like completely different game sometimes. So I think that especially for competitive games, and Knights of Honor can be a competitive game, and it can be completely cooperative game. I think both play types are great. It can be free for all, of course, if you want to experience the diplomacy part between players. But yeah, settings make the game very different, and they're very important for players who prefer to play with friends, enemies, or frenemies, as they're called.
Yeah, enemies or frenemies. Yeah, I don't know if I know that the few times I've played the multiplayer with the Knights of Honor team, it seems like I have mostly enemies, not frenemies, because everyone likes to gang up on me for some reason.
Well, it's hard to be the publisher in the studio, Yeah.
Isn't that the truth? I will never forget the famous island invasion of, I think that was 2020 or 2021, or whatever that was, when I had 3 of you guys all decide that, nah, this land is our land, not Brad's land, that's for sure. All right, well, there's a question that's coming up in chat already about the starting periods. So I think that's where we actually start off in this stream, or in the Dev Diary. So there are 3 kind of predefined starting periods that we're offering in the game. Maybe you can go into a little bit of detail about that, because I see DefBGG already asking that question. So.
Yeah, so first of all, top level, what the periods define is the political landscape, what kingdoms do we have in the game, and this has impact on a lot of features. For example, what units there will be available in the game, because some of them are specific for some kingdoms or a set of kingdoms. It will define the tension in some regions, because there are some mixtures of fates and more segmented regions of the map, so it's pretty important. Probably we should go through the 3 different periods separately.
Yeah, go ahead. I think that'll be interesting for people. Go ahead and let the cat out of the bag, so to speak. By the way, while you're watching, for those that are this way. For those that are looking this way, we are showing a whole bunch of new gameplay footage today. I should have started with that. So the team recorded a whole bunch of cool content while they were playing some multiplayer sessions, and we're going to be rolling that footage and that B-roll throughout the stream. So for those that are regular customers, so to speak, regular fans of the show, you're going to see a whole bunch of new footage throughout the stream today. So I hope you enjoy that. Go ahead, Alex, please. Let's go through the different 3 regions, 3 time frames real quick.
Yeah, it's a bit of personal opinion, but I will mention just the things that I find best in the 3 different periods. Well, in the first one, what's very nice for me is that there are a lot of pagan kingdoms, and this makes huge difference if you want to play as a pagan, because there are a lot of pagan territories to expand to, and not all of your neighbors hate you so much, and it creates very good tension. We have Cumania, north from the Balkans, we have the Pechenegs, we have the Finns, and some other Nordic kingdoms. I'm not sure if I'll get those right, but Esti, Semigalia, Sarema, I think. There are plentiful pagan kingdoms, and because playing a pagan is pretty cool, it's the best period to play as one, and you have more choice which kingdom to pick. So this is probably what I find best there. We have some great caliphates and Islamic kingdoms in that period as well. The Almoravids are pretty deep into Spain. They're very powerful.
Well, I think, Alex, not to cut you off, but if you go through the details of every period in this level, we're going to be here for about 3 or 4 hours. So let's talk through all three a little bit quicker, and then we can go into the other options here. You see, Alex is so into this that like once he gets going about a detail on this thing, I have to kind of you can see like the both the passion and like the designer nerdism that goes on in a positive way. Like you know everything about this. So it's really easy. So there's I guess the high level you can get from even that one deep dive. There's a lot in there when it comes to each of the regions and how their custom options really can change the way that the game experience goes based on which kind of area or kingdom that you like to play, or which religion or affiliation you want to start with. The variety even in just those 3 era changes are quite a bit. So really quickly, what are the 3 areas and kind of their high level vision that may be helpful?
So this first one was 1100. It's the beginning of the 12th century. The second one is more than 100 years after that. It's around 1224, I think. And actually, what's great inside it is about it is that there is a Bulgaria there, because before that we get that huge Byzantium, which has conquered the whole Balkan Peninsula, and here we have a pretty strong Bulgaria.
Some Bulgarian love in chat. Who's a fan of the Bulgarian?
Definitely.
Right?
And also we have some great caliphates. There are Ayyabids and Almohads. If you want to fight for caliphates to be the only one, it's pretty interesting right there. And the third one, it's I think 1360. Which is when the Reconquista is almost done. We have very strong Castile there. England is crazy powerful at that period. It has a lot of territories in mainland. Ireland is under England's control, and we have the Golden Horde there, a lot of cool stuff. We have a very powerful Lithuania, which is the strongest pagan kingdom in the game from all periods. So if you want to start with very, very strong pagans, easy mode, Lithuania is the way to go. So I think that's the top level.
Awesome. Yeah, and I mean, it really is a great starting point for allowing you to enjoy the game in a couple of different ways. We've talked about historical accuracy as a guiding principle, but not a rule. One of our main pillars is that we do want to be historically accurate, but to us, fun or game over historical accuracy. So there are a few liberties we've taken here and there to kind of bring each of those eras to life in a way that we feel will drive the most fun for the game. And I think I think you'll still appreciate the tremendous amount of research and effort went into each. I remember back when we were first setting up even like the first era. And it was just like, my God, there's a lot of provinces and a lot of names we got to get right, and a lot of research on what things were called in this part of the world, and debates about, even in one era, different people had different ways they referenced certain parts of the world. So it was a complex deep dive, and I think you'll enjoy that, not just from a multiplayer standpoint, from a game standpoint in general. One question I do want to take really quick, even though we did so, Massive 90 is asking about the RTS or our battles in multiplayer. We talked about this for about 10 minutes, I think, on the multiplayer part 1 stream, so I'm not going to go all the way into it, because if you want to hear that, I think the answer is way more comprehensive. I'll just say simply that we gave it a lot of thought, and we feel like it's much better for the multiplayer experience that we simulate all of the battles in multiplayer. There are a whole bunch of reasons for this, and again, if you go watch that stream, you'll be able to see all of it and understand kind of what our thinking was there. It wasn't a decision we took lightly. It honestly took us over a year of debate and discussion and design experiments and blah 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 before we finally reached that conclusion, and we did it for what we think is for the better of the entire experience. So please, if you want to get more into the details, I talk about it for quite a bit on the other stream, and I think that'd be more informative than me trying to do it here. So Let's go. Another thing I think is important to mention about, and we've talked about this across all of our streams. If you want to go and maybe inject your own labeling or province layout for a kingdom that's near and dear to your heart, and you have a little bit of modding chops, all of these, you can go in and modify all of this as a modder and create your own era, so to speak. Isn't that right?
Yeah, all right. You can redefine the kingdoms that are in, and which kingdom owns which province, to whom are the loyalty of the population of each province, and so on. There is a lot of power in this. We're still discussing what will be the exact tools that we will provide. There are other options also. You can load a game from a save and start completely anew, but just use the political map. So if you have some very interesting situation, you can just save it and start from there with some friends and so on. So there are a lot of possibilities, a lot of things that can be edited. We will probably make a dev diary for modding, but it will definitely be a bit later on, because it's still one of the features that is under construction, debated, and so on. So we'll see what we'll be able to provide on release, what we'll work on later on, and so on.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think we'll save some of the mod conversations about, like, there are some, and some of it's still being discussed quite actively about creating your own world. I'm not going to comment on that quite yet, but there's a lot of mod functionality that's there. There's a lot that we're striving for, and there's some things that we probably won't support officially out the door. But if there's one thing that I've learned in my time in this business, I never want to underestimate just how crazy modders can get when they figure out how to pull things apart and make their own stuff. So who knows what people can pull off. Now, another key aspect that you can control, and I think this is a really critical feature for how you set up your game, is kind of the option you have around kingdom and province setup. Because, you can play with a historical setup, and every kingdom is exactly the way it is in kind of the single player experience, but that may not create the most even playing field in multiplayer, right? Like, some kingdoms are just going to be differently sized than others, and positions are different, and blah blah blah, so that has quite a bit of an impact. So I think one thing that I like is that we have some options for you to, as a host or whoever's setting up the game, decide to almost like custom kingdom, right? Like, it's still the name of the kingdom that you want, but it based on everyone's going to have 3 provinces that's a human, or 4 provinces or whatever. You can add those parameters in to make it even.
Yeah, it's very important, because initially we had just the historical mode, and it's okay, we sometimes use it because we want more immersive experience, and it's okay for weaker players to get bigger kingdoms and so on. But we wanted to at the same time have a balanced game for multiplayer, and not limit the players to play. For example, you don't have that many kingdoms with exactly 4 starting provinces or 6 starting provinces. So right now you can just pick a kingdom, or not just a kingdom, but even a province, and that province or kingdom will be shrinked or expanded to the customized, to the selected size. It's just an option. Everyone can just either choose a specific custom size for each player, or just start with the historical kingdoms.
I think it was I remember these debates in the beginning, because it definitely was it's almost like I don't know how many of you guys are old school GoldenEye fans, but old school GoldenEye, and it's like, okay, no one can play Odd Job, because Odd Job's like just not, he's shorter than everybody else, and that hitbox, and like Odd Job's not fair. And I remember playing with friends back in the old days. Odd Job, you try to pick Odd Job, you get hit, right? No one plays Odd Job. In a way, it's almost the same with a variation in the Knights of Honor multiplayer, the Knights of Honor 2 multiplayer, where it's like, you can't play that kingdom, like, you're going to be so much ahead of everybody else. That's not fair. So these settings kind of allow you to not have that thrown in, while still being able to play like Bulgaria if you want. You can play Bulgaria, but then still even out the size, so that you all have kind of a balanced experience.
Yeah, we went a bit further the last few days. It's something very new, and we even removed the patriarchs of autokephalios kingdoms. So because they are very strong, and it's a nice goal of the game to have a patriarch. We just, if you're not playing Historical Kingdoms, you don't get a Patriarch right now, and you don't get trade centers in the beginning. So we added some additional limitations for players which do not play on historical mode.
Yeah.
For balancing reasons, of course.
And I'm sure as we continue refining and polishing, there's other things that are going to continue to come up. It's a constant, and even after launch, right? Like it's sometimes surprising at what elements can really impact the progression curves, both from economy, from diplomatic, because diplomatic pressures are not just isolated to size. It can be position, it can be religion, it can be a lot of different things. So we're still learning that and trying to polish the experience as much as possible. And
we know that we can never have completely equal start because some provinces are bigger. You can have a lot stronger neighbors, which can be a huge benefit or a huge problem. It depends. So there is some randomness always and some inequality, but we're trying to keep it as small as possible for such game.
I'm chuckling because by the way, everyone's excitement in chat is really appreciated. It means a lot to us, and you can see how much effort we're putting into trying to make the best game we have. But Peldroth, I highly recommend when this game does finally come out, whether it's release or early access or whatever, that you do not quit your job and you maintain a living so that you can play the game and as well as pay for food, even if it's a part-time job, so you can eat ramen and play a lot of Knights of Honor too. I don't know. I'm not going to dictate to you what you should do, but jobs are good. It's good to take care of yourself. So maybe we need to add a special like a Beldroth TV flag, where if Beldroth only allows the game to be played a certain amount of hours per week, so he has his job safety net still in there. I'm just kidding.
Yeah, it's not okay. If he quits, I quit too.
You heard it first, Beldroth. If you quit your job to play Knights of Honor 2, Alex is leaving the team, so you can't leave. You gotta find a way to balance it.
Yeah.
I hope Vesso is in the background. He's like, no. Do not quit your job. If Alex goes, we're in trouble. Oh man. So let's go into a couple more settings, and then we have Georgie in the background here that we're going to bring in. So with the next setting we were talking about is the AI difficulty, which is also super important because even though you're playing with human players, it really makes a big difference how the AI impacts your game, how aggressive or passive it is at the start when it decides to start being aggressive, because you're playing there's only a certain number of human players, so most of the world is populated by AI.
Yeah. Even if you compete between each other, it makes a huge difference how aggressive, how strong your neighbors are. It defines the pace of the game. It's not just. It's hard to call it difficulty in that case. It's much more than difficulty. It's just the dynamic of the game. If you want more casual experience or easier to beat AIs, lesser problems with rebellion risk and so on, you just want to play. Even if you play a versus game, you'd like to play some war difficulties for the AI, and for cooperative, it's obviously hugely important, the AI difficulty, because it's pretty much the players against the world, so it's like in single player almost.
Yeah, I know we talked about in one of in multiplayer part 1 some of the different like game modes that are in there, and that also can really impact what kind of AI experience you want, because some of your game modes are kind of designed for short chunk type experiences, like an hour or 45 minutes or whatever. And in that situation, the AI is really just there to be conquered and to be leveraged in order to hit your goals. It's not like you're trying to find them as a challenge. It's a race. Like everyone's trying to get to wherever they're trying to get. Versus if you're playing like a more epic campaign, you may want the AI to be a little more dynamic and more responsive so that you get that kind of grand arc to everything. And I think we've added a number of controls in already to tune how the AI works, and I think that's going to be something we continue to expand as we develop, because it really does allow a lot of power to the players to define what kind of multiplayer experience they're going to have, and that's super important, I think.
Yeah, hugely.
Yeah. So I think we're going to go into kind of the more multiplayer specific settings for a second. We have a lot of questions popping up, so I want to make sure we have enough time for questions. So Alex, so long farewell for the moment, for a time.
See you in a bit.
Yeah, everyone, and don't quit. And we're gonna bring Georgie on here, and then we're gonna get into the next topic. So I'm gonna wait till I see Georgie here. Is Georgie here?
Hello, hello.
I hear a thumbs up. How are you, Georgie?
All right, I'm good. Thanks for having me again. Happy New Year, everyone.
Yeah. How's your beard?
We're still growing, thankfully.
I think if we're not careful, my hair may eclipse your beard in length impressiveness in a while. I'm getting there, right? We have some.
Yeah, you are.
Yeah. Do you have a good New Year?
Yeah, it was pretty chill, pretty normal, nothing exciting. Just a good time to take a break for a week or so, or a week or two, just to play games and just be lazy.
Can I ask the fun question of what you may have played during the New Year break? Do you want to admit?
I started playing Prey, and I also
classical.
I tried to finish it, but as any game I start, I just go to like 50% of it, and I just end, and I start something different. It's just a nasty habit I have.
I know exactly what you mean. I was playing what was it? That new JRPG that came out. Tales of Arise. I was playing Tales of Arise, and I got to the very end of it right before the Thanksgiving break, and I keep on telling myself I got like 2 or 3 hours to finish it. I should just go finish it, and now we're here in January, and I've been playing already a whole bunch of other stuff. So I feel you out, man. Well, as much as everyone wants to hear about our hair stylings and the games we're playing, we should probably talk about multiplayer a little bit.
Absolutely.
So everything on your side of this stream is going to be about the kind of multiplayer specific settings. So a lot of the stuff that Georgie and I were talking about before are things that are present in the single player, because they're the similar types of modifiers and the controls are applicable to both sessions. But on the multiplayer front, there are some specific settings that are really designed exclusively for the multiplayer game experience, and I think that's important because there are, and I think when Vesa was on a stream, I can't remember how long ago we talked about this. There's a lot of complexity that may not be obvious at first, but when you really start thinking about how these features work, they function completely different in a multiplayer game versus a single player game.
Yeah, absolutely. There are a bunch of settings for multiplayer that you can't see when you start a single-player campaign, but they're very important for shaping the overall experience. And obviously, when you start looking for a multiplayer game, you can see those and you can check out and determine if you really want to join them, because after you play a bunch of games, you can kind of determine what kind of playstyle you expect. And we're gonna go deeper into them. For example, wars are really specifically restricted or allowed in games that are multiplayer, also espionage, etc. But I also want to mention that there are so many systems in the game that when we've developed them, we've kind of had to shift them a bit for multiplayer. For example, if you have Emperor of the Road and you vote there, the timings are different. If you lead an audience with some other kingdom that's a player one, the dynamic is also a bit different there. So it's a completely different ballpark in some of those mechanics.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's when players finally get their hands on things, we're just scratching the surface of some of those, because it really does need that kind of curated separation between how things work that are fun in a single player experience because you're doing them to an AI and the AI is not a human, versus in the multiplayer experience when if someone does them to you or if you do them to someone else and the reaction is dynamic, it's not as fun. they have to be altered. So let's talk about the first one, which we talk about in the dev diary. Again, community.knightsofhonor.com. You can read the dev diary if you like. So the first one is about player wars. So there's a number of options around when and how players can go to war. Maybe you can just summarize them really quick.
All right, so let's go through them briefly. You can restrict player wars if you want to. That's the most important bit. And this is an option that, for example, if you're playing in teams, let's say 3v3, and you really want to start off peacefully or continue throughout the game, there's a bunch of different options. You can completely remove the option to allow wars between players altogether, or you might restrict them for a certain time periods or generations. So you have those options, basically whatever you want to do. And if you play in a team with someone else, so for example, you and me play against Alex and Vessel, us as teammates, we cannot declare war between each other because we are teammates. Yes, so that's another restriction that applies. But I think this is a very important option because, I mean, from experience from playing multiplayer strategy games with other people, I mean, most of the times we kind of remove we create a soft cap for ourselves. We say, hey, let's not wage war, let's just play peacefully. But there are some players that just want the crazy Owen experience, which is really drastically different than single player because multiplayer is such a dynamic landscape that sometimes wars can be a bit overwhelming.
Yeah, what I love about it is the ability to kind of have different ways that you restrict player wars from happening, and you know, one of them is you know, obviously just pure time, and it's like, okay, how long do we want to allow before player wars can happen, if you allow them to happen at all. Another one is, and I think is very unique to the Knights of Honor experience, but very interesting, which is basically lineage, right? Like how often you change sovereign. Knights of Honor 2 sovereign, hooray! What a great. But how often you change sovereigns? And I saw a question that I think we'll kind of answer ahead of time. Who was it that asked this? There was someone from the forums that asked about a potential exploit opportunity. I want to say it was one of William Blake's questions. He asked 20. But the question was really clever because it's like, okay, well, if you have it set to the time frame of sovereign, couldn't you just kill your sovereign to get to the war declaration faster?
Yeah, that is a bad question.
It is, but it's the game doesn't quite work that way because you still need to have time to go get married and then have children, and that child has to really kind of I mean, you could do it when they're young, but that also puts you at a huge disadvantage because then you don't have the weight of the king's skill sets potentially. So there's a lot of like, it's not something where you can just roll it really, really fast. You could maybe do it expedited, but it's not as simple as just trying to blaze through it in a very, very short period of time. There's a lot of
absolutely, and there's also another specific aspect to that, and it's because the rules are if you die, for example, you and me play together, and it's 1v1, and if the goal is for 3 kings to die, if I reach 3 kings and you are still on your first lineage, the game won't end. Both of us have to reach that 3rd lineage, so that's a way to eliminate the exploitedness, so you can't really suicide rush your rulers before their player,
right,
because yeah, otherwise it would be, as whoever asked the question, it would be like that, but we don't want that as a fact.
Yeah, and I actually it's really fun that these settings are in there because, like you mentioned, I know a lot of times when I've played different games throughout my gaming experiences, you do kind of set the friend rules, and people respect it, but it's also nice to have the game provide some of those options, and we're all gamers, so we've had enough of an experience where, like, oh yeah, it was always fun to play that. Maybe we can like let the game help that happen. So that's really cool. Now another a cool setting I think we have is how espionage works, and I think espionage is another very interesting feature set in multiplayer. I know that it's, I may be exaggerating, but from my observations, in my opinion, it was probably the hardest, if not one of the top hardest features we had to deal with in multiplayer. Espionage are kind of like super weapons in a way because they can have devastating consequences, and it feels great when you're doing it against an AI. It's a lot of fun to pull off, an espionage action, but when it comes and happens against you, it can be very, very painful. And we do a lot of logic on the AI side to still put espionage pressure on you without ruining your game. But in multiplayer, you go build like 3 high-powered spies and start going to town, like you can ruin someone's experience pretty much, like troll them to death, and that's not fun for the person that's on the receiving end. It could be fun in certain circumstances, but by and large, it's not going to be an enjoyable game.
Yeah, definitely. It's as much as it is a high-risk, high-reward element of the game, for the most part of the game, it still is one of the aspects that can make you rage quit if you're not prepared for it. And that's why we've implemented those options for basically every single spy pod that we have in the game. We can control if it is allowed, depending on the setting that's chosen in the game. So you can limit them, you can make them a bit more available, or you can just go unlock everything and just enable complete havoc. it's gonna be really interesting to see once many people start playing the game what would be the most picked option.
Yeah.
Because I personally like espionage on fully in multiplayer games, but like the last two games, Alex just destroyed me with it. I mean, it was not pleasant for me at all. So I'm kind of rethinking my words right now.
I see
but
Alex laugh. So you guys can't see him because he's in the background
Yeah.
now, but I see him just laughing and chuckling in the background. So I think he takes great pride in the fact that he trolled your. Yeah, he's doing the thumbs up.
Yeah,
We'll
yeah.
talk about that. We go to all three of us here in about 10 minutes.
But it is one of, I think it's one of the trickiest things to nail down in multiplayer, and in terms of player dynamics. And I think it's going to be something that we're going to see in the future how it turns out. Because right now we're playing a lot with each other and other people, but when a whole bunch of different playstyles come in it, it's going to be an interesting experiment to have.
Good day,
Yeah.
sire.
So Kings of Honor,
day,
which
sire.
I know you go by your other pseudonym on the forum. You should know the answer to that, right, buddy? Come on now. You watch those dev streams and dev diaries, every one of them. We talk about that during the. There is an espionage stream. I encourage you to watch it or read it. We do talk about how the spy mechanics work, as well as how you can, I guess, technically defend against them. Though that's kind of a complicated topic. So don't have time to go into it here, but we do have an entire hour-long stream and extensive dev diary about the espionage feature set, and I think we do talk about that there. Yeah, we talk. So I'll answer it. Why not? So there's more details in the stream, but it's all good. Basically, there's different factors that play into how likely a espionage action can be completed. Some of it is a kingdom power differential between you or the kingdom that's attempting to do the action and the kingdom that's receiving the action. So if there's a larger differential, then the success or failure chance is influenced based on the person that's doing it or the person that's not. There is some baseline skills for both spies that are at home and kind of a defensive stance, as well as your king. And your king's level kind of influences that a little bit when it comes to the level of certain skills he has, maybe. And there are also elements of like what your king's class is. So if your king is a spy, he has some substantial boost to protection. So it's a number of different factors that all combine together to equal the espionage chance success. And then there's also a number of things about like the action itself and what kind of action it is. Some actions have a greater or lesser chance to be defended against depending on the layout. So it's complicated on purpose. It's designed to be very dynamic, as it would be, I think, in that era. So I believe we go into it for a little bit during that stream. But yeah, there's quite a bit in there. I want to answer the question, but also we could maybe we should do a stream one day where we just sit there and let people ask whatever they want, like almost like an AMA, and we just go through all these different topics.
Or just play with spies against each other.
Yeah, and it would just be goat questions the whole stream.
Yeah.
So we have to clarify from the diary. There's kind of right now I believe there's a number of different knobs, but there's three main ones, which is full espionage actions, which mean all things are valid. Limited, which means I guess all of the superpower type ones like killing a king or blah 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 are removed. And then we have forbidden, which means espionage is not allowed at all against human players. Right? Did I summarize that right?
Yeah, I think that's pretty much it.
Okay. So and you're playing. I guess when Alex trolled you, you were playing full. I'm guessing.
Oh yeah, definitely. Yeah, it was full. I mean, it's also interesting because most time when you're playing with people, you already have voice chat or you're just throwing in chat, so you kind of know who's doing it.
Sure.
Most of the time.
Most of the time. Yeah, they're cackling on voice chat while they're watching you. Be like, oh, come on, right? Like the reaction you're waiting for it after you send that spy to go do the hunting accident for your prince or whatever it may be.
Yeah.
So the last setting that we talked about in the diary, and I really personally really like this one. It's I don't want to say it's near and dear to my heart, but it's something I have some personal game experience with in my own strategy game multiplayer playing, is how we handle eliminated players.
May God bless.
And a number of strategy games have different ways they deal with this. Some don't at all, and some have different options. So maybe you can give the audience a real quick, high level on how what options we provide for eliminated players.
Yeah, so option number one is simply no repick. So once you're defeated in any way, that's it, game over. But there's also 1, 2, or 3 repicks you can do after you've been defeated. So once you were defeated, you gain the big fancy defeated screen. You have a button that says pick new kingdom, and then there's a list of kingdoms you may pick from, which we are determining based on certain logics we've been implementing. You also can't pick something like the papacy because it's currently forbidden from the regular picking logic. So those things all come into consideration, but you can continue playing. And it's funny because many different moments when I've been starting with, let's say, one province, and I get defeated by a bunch of kingdoms. Yeah, maybe. Usually it's just AIs that bunch up on me for some reason. They hate me, and I'm just like, all right, I'm just gonna pick that kingdom and play with it. I mean, you took my province, I'm gonna pick with my new provinces from the same ones you got from me. So things like that can happen. It's once again, it depends on the players. If you really want to be hardcore about it, you can make it so you're eliminated immediately, but I think it's always fun when you're playing with a large group of people, and it makes for longer sessions and more flexible ones.
Yeah, I know, and I like the fact that we have different slider bars there, because I know, I played a lot of strategy games in my life, and I played quite a bit of Alpha Centauri multiplayer, because I had a friend that used to like doing that with me back in the old days. And I remember a number of times where you would get past, like, the only controls you had was really like a time limit for when you could allow those respawns to take place. I remember a number of games where, like, that time limit for respawning and redoing a new city would expire, and then he would die, or I would die, and the other person was having a great game, and they're like, well, I guess I don't get to keep going. Like, I'm having fun, but you got screwed because you made mistakes, and so now the game is over for both of us because, you know, there's no options. So being able to control that, where it's like, no, if you want respawning for forever, so that even if they're going to be starting kind of lower off, they can still play. Those options are there. I think it's a really compelling slider set of controls to add in.
Yeah, definitely. It's one of those main aspects of multiplayer. We've wanted to really give players control to shape their campaigns. It's up to them, whatever they want to do.
Definitely. Also, DJ Isma, I saw you were a little bit late to the stream, but welcome. Always good to see you, man. Yeah, and I think there's a number of other settings, I'm guessing, that we have that we didn't talk about in the dev diary, and ones that we're still discussing and maybe debating about adding. Is there any that you may want to, like, share with the class that we didn't talk about in the diary before we go into questions?
Yeah, sure. Like some really basic but important ones we haven't focused on is you can determine what starting goal you have, which is valid for both single and multiplayer. There are different values depending on if it's single or multi, but it's still the same aspect. And you may also determine how fast your kings age, which is a really important metric because it shapes long term. It shapes how it goes. For example, you may start with a kingdom that if you pick historical kingdoms, you may start with a kingdom that doesn't have any successors, and if you make aging fast, it's basically hardcore difficulty because you don't have any successors, and you got to find marriage, you got to have time to have children, successors, and so on.
You only have a certain amount of time. Yeah.
Oh yeah, definitely. And if you've entered generations as a time limit as well, then you kind of create a really interesting game mode that way. And I think we can also focus on, but I saw there's questions, so I guess we're going to answer them as well, but two really important options for multiplayer are restrictions for pausing and unpausing and game speed.
Yeah.
Because it's a tricky aspect to balance because you don't know if you're playing with random people if they're gonna grief and pause all the time. So you can implement some restrictions. For example, it takes into account how long was the previous pause duration. So you can't really spawn pause all the time. Same goes for unpausing. There's specific limitations in terms of how many seconds or minutes you can play before the game is paused, and also minimum maximum game speeds. You can determine if you want the maximum game speed to be controlled up to, let's say, 4 or 6 times, or just restricted to a regular playing field where you can only play times 1. And with a lot of players, it's important.
Yeah, so I don't know if William Blake is listening or is on here, but that was a couple of his questions were centered around kind of pausing in game speed. So I think we actually jumped a little bit into the questions earlier.
Yeah.
So that's awesome.
Sorry.
No, that's great. That's great. It's awesome to cover the questions as we go. By the way, Yavor, I do have Age of Wonders Planetfall and have played a little bit. I liked it. A little bit different than I liked Alpha Centauri, well, for a lot of reasons. I'm a big Civ fan, but I love the personalities in Alpha Centauri. I think the unique personalities of the faction leads they had were incredible. I hated Deirdre with a burning passion. I often played the Spartans. Morgan was a nuisance. The little brain guy I can't remember the brain guy's name, but he was always my friend. So I just liked the personalities and kind of, it felt like you were getting to know this cast of kingdoms, and it was limited enough with enough depth that and uniqueness that made it a lot of fun. But yeah, Age of Wonders Planetfall is great. I've enjoyed that too. So let's go ahead and let's bring the trio in. Let's get the band back together. We'll pull Alex in here, and we'll spend the next 14 or 15 minutes doing questions. As always, I like to start with questions from the diary. We had a lot this time around, so I don't think I'm going to be able to get to all of them because I want to take some from the stream too that we didn't answer as we went. But if you go to community.knightsofhonor.com and check out the Provost Zakharov, thank you, from Alpha. Check out the diaries and you put your questions in the diary itself. I always check them the night before and have my handy dandy list, so your chances of getting your questions read and answered are a lot higher. So the first one is a question that we can't answer yet, unfortunately, but I do want to acknowledge it. So Ivory Knight, who's all I know on the stream, was asking about basically how is communication handled in multiplayer. Will it be built-in voice chat systems or just text-based? I would greatly like to be able to chat with all human players and also have a separate chat for my own allied human players. So as far as text chat is concerned, we're still working on exactly how far those features are going to extend, but there's there's a lot of conversation going on about how text chat will work, and maybe it's something we include in a future dev diary. As far as voice is concerned, right now we're leaning on the side of not having voice integrated in for multiplayer. It's maybe something that we revisit depending on how people talk, but our read so far is that a lot of people use either Steam voice integration or Discord or whatever when they're playing. Even if you're playing with random, Steam is pretty easy to use. So there's still, again, it's not a closed topic, and there's been discussions back and forth. It's always tricky. I know me personally, and we've done polls on this on other projects as well as on that a lot of people use their own voice comms, right? It should become kind of standard these days. And I personally know that I always use my own voice comms too. So the effort it takes to make that system work seamlessly can be put towards other features, and it often is one thing that's removed. But it's not a closed topic, and if we find enough people really express interest in it, we can discuss it. The next question is about so Do Vila Legend asked, I think we kind of answered this organically, but I'll throw it out there just so we can clarify. Will it be possible to set these kind of parameters in single player too, like king aging, starting gold, etc.? Alex, why don't you take that one?
These parameters are also included in single player. They are not multiplayer exclusive. For multiplayer, we have just excluded for single player, we have excluded only those that does not make sense for single player, obviously.
Yep. And we tried to separate out in the dev diary stuff that was multiplayer specific. So hopefully that clarifies that the other topics or other settings are definitely exposed in single player as well. Let's see here. Zerg asked a couple questions about spectator mode. Can you join a game only as a spectator? Can you stay in a game as a spectator after being defeated? I don't believe. Now, remind me correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe right now we don't have a way to join as a passive spectator. Is that correct?
Right now, it's not possible. It was technically possible at one point, but I don't think we're doing it. There are a lot of ways to stream right now. It's integrated in Steam, so you can always have your buddies watching. We have discussed implementing some special features for streaming, like selecting and checking whatever you want, but right now I don't think that we'll implement this on release. And maybe if the people really want it, we can work on it in future.
Yep. Another question that he asked, which I think we didn't talk about too much, we may have talked about this in multiplayer part 1, which is how are pacts between human players handled? Can I defame a friend after he agrees to an alliance but doesn't stand any actual troops? I believe we do. Now remember, we did talk about that in multiplayer part 1 quite extensively. There was a whole section about how that impacts other kingdoms' opinions of you, different impacts of breaking or keeping alliances. So I would encourage you for that question to go check out the Dev Diary multiplayer part 1, just so we can stay on questions that are a little bit newer. But yeah, there's a number of different things you can do a lot, but there are consequences of doing those things. It just depends on how you want to deal with those consequences if you decide to screw your friends over.
Yeah, if you want to play a game which you have some volatile alliances, you should play just in free-for-all mode, and you can make alliances in-game, which you can break. But if you want to play a team game, it's a team game. You have a combined score for the whole team and so on. So it's you can achieve both of those gameplay styles if you want.
Yeah. Also, I think like Basilisk and a couple other guys or girls, I'm not sure which, but and a couple of people on the forums were posting some great suggestions for different options for multiplayer. Some that I think we may have not thought of. Like Basilisk had a few ideas about adding options for rebellions or religion. I think there's some cool thoughts there. So really appreciate all of the added ideas in it. We definitely are reading them and factoring them in. So don't have time to go through all of them, but there's a lot of cool stuff in there to digest. Let me see if I can grab one more question from the forums, and then I'm going to try to grab a few from the chat. Let's see here. We talked about, so Blake was asking about the max players. We talked about that a little bit before. So I think we can ask. We'll answer this one. So Johnson was said. Johnson, by the way, said was a lurker in one of his first questions. So really awesome that. Oh, my mic is acting weird. Sorry about that. Was asking though, are there already diseases like plague and famine or natural disasters like volcano eruptions, strong winter in the game, which affect gameplay? Or will there be DLCs in the future that add something like that as an option when you create a game? So we don't have anything quite like that right now when it comes to like those world events, correct?
Yeah, I guess the closest thing we have is population growth, which is how fast your population is born in your provinces, but we don't really have diseases quite yet.
Yeah. I know for that this was a topic that we discussed quite a bit early on in development, and we haven't even gotten to a point where we're announcing a release date, much less talking about any kind of future support and DLC plans. But there are ideas, I'll say, on the idea barn that have been discussed when it comes to how we can inject things like world events and the dynamics of those into the game, so it's not beyond the realm of possibility. Now, how we decide to approach those and what other cool DLC plans or post-release plans may go ahead of them in the list, I'm not sure, but they're definitely been talked about a number of times. So good idea there to hear, and we're thinking the same way. That's kind of cool.
The funny thing is that we recently discussed some post-release updates, and having plagues, healthcare, and climate effect, especially on the southern and northern regions, were part of that discussion. So yeah.
Yeah, definitely. It's kind of fresh.
So we have 5 minutes left or so. Let me see if I can grab some questions that I didn't get during the stream. So this is a funny one. Kings of Honor asks, what is the hardest country to play in multiplayer in our opinions? What would you guys think about that? That's a good question.
I don't know.
Pretty much every kingdom with a single province. Probably, I would suggest some of the pagans in the late periods from the smaller ones, because you have a lot of Catholics that pretty much hate you. So I guess this will be the hardest.
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess it also depends where you spawn compared to the players and what game mode you're playing on. If it's free for all and you're all together, it's a bit of a Owen scenario.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's always tough too, because it all depends on your playstyle as well. I actually find playing large kingdoms also very challenging at the start, because you get a lot more aggressive neighbors at the very, very beginning. And even in single player, that can be its own unique challenge, but in multiplayer, that's a whole different level of weight, because you don't have time to kind of optimize your kingdom in the beginning because you're in pressure right away. Versus from the AI, especially the AI is set to kind of normal levels, while other players may be able to kind of enjoy a more peaceful coexistence with their neighbors at the start. So there's it all depends on what kind of things are hard for you, I guess. So yeah. Death BGG has a question about how does multiplayer work? Are there servers hosted by you guys or player hosts them? Because if players host them, there are problems with the ports of some internet providers. So the answer is a little bit of both in a weird way. So the game sessions themselves are client server models. So someone that's one of the clients, I guess, like there's a host, and that host is where a lot of the game logic sits. And we're doing quite a bit of work to handle things like network traversal and other types of challenges with the ports and testing. So that should be relatively flexible. Obviously, there are some ISPs that have unique issues, and we should have most of them handled, but we'll react to those as they come up. There are also some elements of the multiplayer system that are tied to a light backend that we're hosting, and I'm not going to go into too much of the technical details. It's not really related to the actual moment-to-moment gameplay experience itself, but there is some data that's going back and forth that is valuable to how we know about session information and allow you to rejoin a session, etc., etc. So it's kind of there's elements of both types of systems in there, but it's primarily client server where you're hosting the host yourself. Sander64 asks, can you have an unlimited length multiplayer campaign? I mean, absolutely, right?
Yeah. Time limit is just an option.
You can do a challenge where one person paints the entire world and then the other person has to try to paint it back. I mean, there's all sorts of crazy things you could do. Let's see here. So this is an interesting question that Yavor asked that I want to take earlier. I think it's a cool one. So more general than it is about Knights of Honor specifically, but I think it's cool. So Yavor984 asked, by the way, Yavor, always good to see you. I want to ask something as a non-developer. How hard is it to fix something in the game after launch? Is it possible to have a good launch and still add on features in the game, or is it a pain? So that's very complicated, and it's complicated for a number of different reasons. When it comes to fixing things like bugs or quality of life improvements, it kind of bugs are often as straightforward as they would be in fixing them in development, depending on what kind of bug it is. And those can be fast or slow, depending on how complex it is for repro cases. Like, is it a random issue? Is it something where we understand what's going on really easily and it's 100% repro? That usually is very easy to fix. I mean, not always technically easy, but at least it's easier than something we can't repro a lot. But you're kind of blending two concepts, which is how easy it is to add features versus fixing things. And adding features really depends, because sometimes the thing that the players want ties into fundamental infrastructure for how the game is built that would require almost like redoing the foundation of a house. It takes a lot of dredging and remodeling in order to build that thing on top of something, because it's not really structured for that. And those structures are not always obvious. It could be the way the data is put together, maybe not even something player facing, or it could be the way the toolkit is built and how easy it is for us to add or change certain types of things. We built Knights of Honor 2 Sovereign in a very modular fashion with a lot of what's called data-driven structures, with the idea of being able to add things easily. But even during development, we've run into situations where we're trying to change something and realize that, oh wow, this is going to take like 3 or 4 months to even get started, because there's some really big fundamental changes that touch every aspect of the game. And if we want to do this, it's a big investment. And we've done it. We've definitely made those kind of changes of those classes before. So it just depends. And I know that's not the best answer, but it's a complicated part of game development.
Just to add up, it's the process is always more complex, because you have always to work in branches. Even to commit the smallest thing, you have to make a lot of smoke testing and so on. So it's always slower post-release, but how difficult it is to debug, it's the same, but the process is more complex, at least.
Yeah, there's some good. So I don't know how many of you guys pay attention to industry type stuff like GDC. I think this was like 5 or 6 years ago. There was a really cool talk by Paradox. We have friends at Paradox. You know, all of us in games. It's a small industry. We know each other. We talk quite a bit. And they gave a really cool talk about the challenges of adding both free and DLC content to games, and even some of the challenges they have with certain games that they've made where they added features and paid DLCs that ended up needing support for every other thing they ever did, because even though it was ancillary, it added a layer of complexity into the game systems that had to be mirrored across everything in order to work. So it can be very complicated, even in trying to add something so you can think through it and understand the implications for future development and features. So it's a really cool concept and idea to talk about. You know, my background, I've worked on live as a service games before, so I have a lot of experience in this area, because those are the worst of this. They're the most complicated. But it's if you guys are interested in that kind of stuff and maybe doing a stream about the more nuts and bolts of game making, I know that you guys often want to see features and whatnot, but if that's something really cool to a large number of you, you know, maybe talk about that in Discord or on the forums, and maybe we could do a special half stream or stream about more of the insights into how we do this stuff, as opposed to just exposing features. There's a lot that goes on in the kitchen before we bring it up to serve it at the table, so to speak. Do you want to say something, Alex?
No, I was previously working in the mobile and web games section of the industry, so there's a lot we can share about live development and development when you have persistent data. You can just, it's not just starting a new game, you have to make it backwards compatible with each update, so it's a nightmare.
Yeah, for sure. I'm gonna just answer this one again because it always comes up, and it'll be my last question I answer. We aren't talking about release date yet. I know everyone's gonna ask every stream. It's absolutely fine. I don't mind it. I've been being asked it for 24 streams now. It's all good. But no, we're not. You'll know because we'll say it. We're not ready to talk about release date quite yet. But I promise you, when we will scream it from the mountaintops with cool content and big information. The game is coming along, and as you can see from the videos, a lot more polish, but there's still a lot of stuff we're doing, and we want to make sure, like we've said from the very beginning, obviously, you know, we try to do the best we can to make the best Knights of Honor 2 version we can, and whether we get it right or not, you'll have to tell us when we release the thing, but we're doing our best to give it the time it needs to become the greatest version it can. So once we feel like we have that, then we'll get into more details about release timelines and potentially new betas or whatever. I know, as a fan of myself of games, I know how eager everyone gets to know, and definitely respect that. And hopefully sometime we'll be able to share that with you. Alex and Georgie, as always, great to have you guys on.
Yeah, thank you for hosting, and thanks to everybody for joining in.
Thanks a lot. It was really fun once again.
Yeah. And it's great to be in 2022, fresh January month. And hope everyone stays safe out there. I know that there's a lot going on with all the COVID stuff, so take care of yourselves. It's great to have you on. We will be back in 4 to 5 weeks as normal, and with a new topic. And we hope you guys take care of yourselves. Thank you so much for joining the show. We really appreciate all of your passion and excitement for the game. And take care. Appreciate you all. Thank you. Cheers.
Take care, guys. See ya.